Morant with a running start. Elevates. Oh, he dunks. Oh, my goodness.
Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn his heat. It's gone. Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining. Conley now a three. Count it. A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant. Oh, he hit it. John Morant, insanity.
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Grizzlies win edition. My name is Keith Parrish. The Grizzlies played their first Summer League game. They beat the 76ers in a close one. I'm going to talk about that game on this episode. I'm also going to talk about Dillon Brooks signing a new contract and the Grizzlies picking up a new player as part of a proposed sign and trade deal, which is not official. I'm also going to talk a little bit more about the Derrick Rose acquisition, as there are a few things maybe to update. Not many, but I thought there was some further information I could give about both the Rose signing and the Desmond Bane extension. Since my last episode was recorded late Friday night, a quote-unquote emergency podcast, an immediate reaction to that news before I went out of town for the weekend. And so we can start just with some kind of news and notes about the transactions that the Grizzlies have been involved with, and then we'll talk about the Summer League game. First of all, the Derrick Rose deal, still to me, questionable on-court value, although he does fit the backup point needed while John Morant is out due to suspension. There were tons of other deals signed in free agency for guys I thought would have been a much better on-the-court fit. And many of those guys signed for less than $5 million a year. Some of them signed for minimum contracts. So again, the basketball reasons signing looks questionable. Does he still have it in the tank? I mean, this guy had a couple of big playoff games in 2021, the last time where really he had a really strong on-court performance. It seems like most people are arguing that it is for the mentorship role for John Morant and for locker room leader reasons, which I guess those are useful. They're hard for me to assess, as in basically all I podcast about is on-court performance. And so beyond that, it's hard to really make heads or tails of some of those more, intangible benefits of the signing. And it feels like, again, it's a promotional signing. It's sentimentality. When they announced that the signing was official, it was all Memphis Tigers pictures. Feels like they're trying to sell tickets and drum up interest. So who knows there. One note about something that seems like I got wrong on the last episode. Someone alerted me that when a veteran signs a 2-year deal, that the league does not pick up any portion of that salary. I was saying how 10-year vets, the league actually subsidizes those contracts because the players cost more than younger veterans. But if you sign a multi-year deal, apparently the team is responsible for that full salary. I went to the CBA to try to double check that, and I'll be honest, couldn't figure it out. Couldn't find the applicable section, but maybe that note is correct that I received. Going to the Desmond Bane extension, which everyone has noted is large. It is, in fact, the largest contract ever handed out by the Memphis Grizzlies, the first one over $200 million total. One thing that the Grizzlies did, I guess, get back in this negotiation is they didn't include an escalator clause where if he made All-NBA, he'd be eligible for the Supermax 30% extension. So in a sense, they got something from him there by just having him agree to what looks like a 25% max, although Chris Harrington made a great point We don't know for sure if it is an official 25% max contract, which projects to be $207 million, or it might just be a flat-out 5-year, $207 million contract and thus would not be tied to any possible cap increases. And again, I think it's a good deal for the Grizzlies. I'm not very concerned if it looks like an overpay at all. I think the benefit of having Desmond Bane signed for the next 6 seasons, the final year of his rookie deal and then the 5 years of this extension, there's a benefit to that. And then, like, if you just start looking at shooting guards around the league, I mean, he's already a top 10 shooting guard easy. He's close to maybe being the 5th best shooting guard in the NBA. I know there's positional fluidity, and we can argue whether or not these guys are shooting guards, but, like, the best shooting guard is probably Devin Booker, and then it's like Donovan Mitchell and Anthony Edwards. If Jaylen Brown's a shooting guard, okay. Then we get to the Zach LaVines and Bradley Beals, and, man, Desmond Bane is, I think, right there with those guys. He's a better shooter than those guys, and he's a lot younger than those guys. You look at the contracts of Tyler Hero and Jordan Poole. Yeah, sign me up for the Desmond Bane 5-year, $207 million contract. Now, the Dillon Brooks sign and trade. Let's talk about this. Dillon Brooks signed with the Houston Rockets, as most people thought he was going to. He got 4 years, $80 million, fully guaranteed, which frankly is kind of amazing. He ended up getting the giant payday that he was wanting. He locked in more money than he could have gotten with a Grizzlies extension. Despite the hideous playoffs and all of the negative headlines, Dillon got the bag. Everything worked out amazingly for Dillon. 4 years, $80 million kind of seems like a lot for what we saw on the court for Dillon. Yes, he was second team all defense. Yes, he was a crucial part of a Grizzlies team which won a lot of games over the past 3 seasons. But he looked like a guy who would not accept a smaller role. Looked like a guy who was just struggling to shoot and struggling to fit in by not acquiescing to requests to, hey, tone it down a little bit. Stop making headlines. Just maybe help us win games on the basketball court and stop antagonizing the opponent and harming us through the media. Despite not backing off of those requests or caving into those requests, Dillon gets his big contract. And now, we were all saying that it's extremely important for the Grizzlies when Dillon Brooks signs a new deal that the Grizzlies work out a sign and trade. At the very least, to get something out of him being on the team. You work out a trade exception. And the Grizzlies are getting some trade exception. We don't know the details because, again, these transactions are not complete. We also know beyond a trade exception, the Grizzlies are acquiring guard Josh Christopher from the Rockets. He is a 2-year NBA veteran, still very, very young. He hasn't shown much in his first 2 NBA seasons that would make you think he's definitely going to stick around for his next contract. But he's again, very, very young, kind of a combo guard. He's a family friend of Tayshaun Prince, who works in the Grizzlies front office. So maybe they are interested in what Josh Christopher can bring to the basketball court. More than likely, or it seems probable right now, again, not knowing that many details or the specifics of the trade, it seems like taking Josh Christopher was just the price the Grizzlies had to pay for getting a Dillon Brooks trade exception. If the Grizzlies had their roster cut down today, Josh Christopher is probably the guy getting waived with just 1 year of guaranteed money. He doesn't seem like he would be valued over maybe the other possible cut candidate of Kenneth Lofton Jr. I mean, maybe this summer there will be some other trades where the Grizzlies try to move on from John Conchar or Zaire Williams, and thus they open up a roster spot and, they end up with Josh Christopher on opening night. I don't know, but they don't have to cut down the roster today, and there's no harm in carrying Josh Christopher's guaranteed money all summer, and they will make their decision up later what to do with him. Woj called a potential Dillon Brooks trade-a-player exception a, quote, substantial trade-a-player exception, which, depending on the amount, it doesn't look like it's actually going to be that substantial. This number could increase, I believe, based on when the transaction actually processes, but this is another situation where I found a lot of difficulty tracking down the exact number of what it could be. It seems like if it's based on Dillon's base salary for last season, and then you subtract what Josh Christopher's making, it seems like at a minimum the Grizzlies are getting an $8.9 million trade-a-player exception, which, in my mind, that is not substantial. Like, the old Mike Conley trade exception of $24 million, that was substantial. That helped the Grizzlies acquire the Andre Iguodala salary, which they then flipped into a future first-round pick, which, of course, that first-round pick was flipped into Marcus Smart. A trade-a-player exception of $8.9 million, it's useful, but it's not, like, that great. It's hard to find a good player making less than that amount that the Grizzlies could add. So with the trade-a-player exception, the Grizzlies could add a player making less than that amount without matching the salary. Like the best players that I can tell that might be available making less than $8.9 million per year, we're talking about like DeLon Wright and TJ McConnell and Chuma Okeke. I mean, it's not really that good of players. I mean, maybe they could use it to acquire somebody that another team wants to salary dump, like a Furkan Korkmaz or a JaVale McGee or an Otto Porter, and then you could use that trade exception to, I don't know, pick up a few extra second-round picks. That wouldn't be the worst use of the trade-a-player exception, but I don't know how you're going to get a difference maker for that trade-a-player exception. So what the Grizzlies do now with the roster, if it is use the traded player exception in the next 12 months to bring somebody in, if it is to still use their mid-level exception, the Grizzlies still have their mid-level exception where they could sign somebody. Of course, they have more guaranteed contracts than they have roster spots right now. Would they bring in a 17th guaranteed salary for next year by using the MLE on somebody? That seems very unlikely. If they don't use their MLE, this would be the second year in a row they don't use their MLE, I will probably continue to criticize them for it because it seems like they could add somebody who really helps the team. And they've chosen, in my mind, not to. Maybe Derrick Rose will substantially help the team. Maybe he will be a great boost while Ja is suspended and then continue maybe being instant offense off the bench if he can find that fountain of youth. If, in fact, the Knicks weren't playing him just because they preferred to play younger players. Maybe Derrick Rose still has a lot in the tank, can prove me and the other doubters wrong, and that will be a big boost to the Grizzlies' on-court product. But if it's not, and the Grizzlies choose not to use their MLE to bring in someone else, it's going to be a tough kind of pill to swallow for me. I mean, one thing they could be saving the MLE for, which is, I guess, like a silver lining. It's not that crucial to roster building, but if, in fact, they don't use their MLE and they want to be a player on the buyout market, I believe they could use some of their MLE to offer a contract above the minimum salary. Say, in fact, if Gordon Hayward gets bought out this year, and if they could offer Gordon Hayward the most money to come join the Grizzlies, that would be a good use of the MLE in my mind. How feasible that scenario is, I have no idea. I would rather probably sign someone who I think can help right now. But anyways, that is kind of a wrap-up of the transactions that went down. But more fun than transactions is on-court basketball, and we got a glimpse of that as the Summer Grizz took on the 76ers on Monday night in Utah. I will talk about that game and the individual performances right after this short break. Grizz Nation, make sure you're ready for the upcoming elections and check out your voter registration status. The deadline to register to vote is September 5th. Make sure you are registered to vote. For more information, please visit grizzlies.com/grizzvotes. All right. The the Memphis Grizzlies defeated the Philadelphia 76ers 94-92 in the first Summer League game. I joke because this entire roster is essentially the hustle. The hustle last year started, I believe, this exact starting lineup in several games. Jacob Gilyard, Vince Williams Jr., Kenneth Lofton Jr., David Roddy, and Jake LaRavia. Vince Williams and Jacob Gilyard both are on two-way contracts for the Grizzlies. Lofton, Roddy, and LaRavia, of course, have guaranteed deals. Off the bench, Matthew Hurt, he played for the Hustle some last year. The Grizzlies' own 45th pick in this year's draft, GG Jackson, made his debut. The second-round pick, Tariq Baberovich, he somewhat surprisingly played. I wasn't sure we were going to see him. He got in. He did not make any of his shots. And then Tariq Owens and Joel Ayayi were the final guys who got in. And now, I think the big headlines from this one, most people were going to say it was great to see the returning guys, Roddy, Lofton, and Vince Williams Jr. play well. I think the best player in this game, I mean, maybe it was Kenneth Lofton Jr. He took over in the fourth quarter. He didn't do a whole lot before then, but Jr. was dominant in the final period. Finished with 21 points, 13 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 steals, made 2 out of 4 3-pointers. So that's everything you hope to see. And I think it's a good sign, once again, that you could say he was underwhelming for 3 quarters and still finishes with this monster stat line. David Roddy had the final go-ahead bucket. Roddy looked very comfortable. He looked to be an NBA veteran, was superior to a lot of the guys on the court. He made 4 out of 9 3-pointers. I thought his stroke looked really, really good. Seemed like maybe the release was a little bit faster. Also, his range, he made a couple of very deep 3-pointers. The most exciting player for me in this game, it wasn't Roddy, it wasn't Lofton. We knew Lofton was going to put up big stats. That's what he does, especially in a summer league setting. I was pretty certain Roddy would look good out there. But Vince Williams Jr. was great in this game. Probably the key element was he made 5 out of 8 3-pointers, was just ripping the nets on these jumpers, and the speed of his release and, of course, the shots going in. Always very, very encouraging. I also thought his individual defense looked very, very good. He finishes with 19 points and 7 rebounds. Maybe he will be in the mix for more playing time in the coming season, especially in that wide open race to see who can take up the small forward minutes. Most of us were probably most excited to see both Jake LaRavia, see any improvements he might have made, and to see GG Jackson's debut. The LaRavia game, kind of tough. He finishes with 12 points. Half of that was from the foul line, and this is like Summer League where they err on the side of calling fouls. So you would say 7 free throw attempts is good generally, but in Summer League, it kind of means nothing. The 2 out of 9 from 3, that was frustrating, discouraging to watch. Also, maybe even more important than the shots not going in, he once again could not generate his own look. He can't shake a defender. He can't make his own shot or can't create his own shot. So I think a lot of us had hoped to see a little bit more than that. Thought his defense was fine. He had a nice block, a couple of good defensive plays. Maybe the NBA game, it's better for him as opposed to Summer League because he is just a 5th guy. If we're hoping to see him be more than like a 5th option on the court, we're not seeing any of that from him so far. As far as the rookie GG Jackson, I think we can be encouraged by what we saw from him. He was only credited with 2 blocks. I was for sure he got 3 in the game. I thought that kind of showed his good NBA-ready frame and size, good hands there defensively. He did airball a jumper where he tried a one-on-one move. He traveled trying to do a drive past a guy. So it wasn't like it was great or overly encouraging from him, but a guy of his size, he seemed fluid. He had a couple of good dribble drives, made a jumper. And so all of those things I think were encouraging, combined, of course, with the blocked shots. So a nice little debut for GG Jackson. As far as did I see enough from Roddy and Lofton? No, I mean, I want to still see them keep playing. Yes, they played well, but it wasn't like they were dominant or anything. And, of course, this Grizzlies team just shot 38% for the game. They trailed the Sixers for most of the game. And also, I think it's important to remember not just that we take all Summer League results with a grain of salt and we should be dubious and doubtful of everything we see out there, but remember last year, the Grizzlies in their first Summer League game, they played the 76ers just like this year. They made a bunch of threes. In this game on Monday, they made 16 threes. Last year in their first Summer League game, the team made 15 out of 30 threes. LaRavia was 4 out of 7 from 3. Vince Williams Jr. last year in the first Summer League game was 3 out of 4 from 3 in the first game. And then after that, the Grizzlies could not shoot anymore. So, yeah, it was awesome seeing Roddy Sniper bang in 4 threes. It was awesome seeing Vince Williams Jr. make 5 out of 8 threes. But remember, there were games last year where they made threes, and then there were lots of games where no one made any threes. So we're still going to want to see the consistency of performance from even the guys who are on the roster, the main roster. I want to see Roddy look good every single game. I want to see him have better games than this, even though, again, it was a solid game. And I do give the Grizzlies credit. When it mattered in the fourth quarter, they got the buckets they needed. They erased that fourth quarter lead of the Sixers. And also, I guess, Jacob Gilyard. So I've assumed, even though he is still on a two-way deal, I assumed they would probably use that two-way spot for a guy who I think has a little bit more upside. Reminder, Gilyard is already 24 years old. He is extremely short. He's 5'9", and he's not much of a scorer. It was great to see him make 2 clutch three-pointers in the fourth quarter, but before those threes, he had 0 points. I mean, those threes were his only points of the entire game, and it just seems hard to carry someone that small who isn't a scorer and hope they're going to play NBA minutes for you. I still feel like one of those two-way spots might need to go to a point guard. I mean, maybe they give him a longer runway to try out, to help the team, to help the main squad. Maybe they value him so much for the way he runs the Memphis Hustle that it's worth it to keep him on one of those 3 two-way spots. I mean, he was good as a game manager. He picked up a lot of steals. That's one of his things. He has really, really quick hands. He was credited with 3 steals in the first Summer League game, got 7 assists. All that's pretty solid, but you're going to need him to be a consistent, I think, outside threat for him to have any chance in the NBA. With that size, if guys can play off of you as well, it seems in my mind that it would be hard for him to have much of an impact at the NBA level. But anyways, the Grizzlies play again on Wednesday. Should be a great game, assuming all the main headline guys play. I would guess with July 4th off, we would still see the normal squad of Kenneth Lofton Jr., Roddy, LaRavia, all the regular guys. And they're playing the Thunder, and hopefully Chet Holmgren will still play. Trey Mann, both Jalen Williamses will play. Because if all those guys play, it should be a really, really good matchup. I would think with the day off for the July 4th holiday that both teams would suit up the regular squads. For the Grizzlies' third game on Thursday, I'm guessing, we're going to see some of the deep cut backups, and they'll let the regular players rest. But that game on Wednesday night is at 6 p.m. Central. Come join me on Playback. I'll be doing a playback for that game. Playback.tv/fastbreak. Breakfast. You can watch the game with me. I will be providing reactions and commentary live. If you have access to NBA TV, if you have access to League Pass, you can log in to playback.tv and validate your credentials, and then you can watch along with me and other NBA fans. It's a lot of fun. So come join me over there. And that, I think, is all I have for today. Hope you guys are having a great July 4th. I will talk to you soon. Go Grizz.